Due to the large size of China's population, there is no doubt that China has become the world's major economic power. Often the question or debate arises, has China replaced the US as the country with the largest economic power in the world? The answer clearly depends on what indicators are seen. In a recent survey by the Pew Research Center, the world community is divided. Some still consider the US a world economic power, others consider China. However, on average, the perception of the world community still ranks the US as number one versus China, which is 42% versus 32%. The funny thing is, developed countries tend to think China is stronger, while developing countries tend to perceive that the US is still the world's main economic power. When talking about the size of the economy literally, we should compare gross domestic production or GDP, an indicator that calculates the total production in a country. Those who consider the US to be the country with the largest economy in the world will refer to this GDP data. If we look at the GDP data from various sources, such as the World Bank or the IMF, indeed the US economy is still much larger than China. Based on data, at the end of 2016, for example, the US economy or GDP reached $18.6 trillion, or 65% greater than China's GDP, which only reached $11.2 trillion. GDP figures quite accurately compare economies within the same country or different countries with similar price levels. However, it can give a misleading conclusion if we compare them between countries, when the price levels are quite different from each other. Nominal GDP measures production activity in the economy by using money as a measuring tool, in this case, the US dollar. A country, let's say country A, which produces 1,000 units of cars, at a price of $1,000 per unit, then the country's GDP is $1 million. Assume there is no other production in the country. But another country, country B, which produces 1,000 units of cars as well, but is traded in the country at a more expensive price of $2,000, then the country's GDP is $2 million. Price differences cause the calculation of the value of GDP in one country to be different from other countries. In the above case, countries A and B actually have the same economic size, but nominally country B is considered to have a larger economy due to higher prices. The price levels in different countries of the world are different from each other. To adjust this price difference, the nominal GDP must be adjusted to the difference in price levels. GDP that has been adjusted to the price difference is usually called GDP purchasing power parity or triple P, which based on the same purchasing power. So, in the example of countries A and B, if based on purchasing power parity, then the GDP of country B should be divided by 2, since the price of goods there is twice as high as that of country B. So the GDP triple P of country B equals $1 million equals GDP triple P of country A. Which in real terms is indeed the same, since both produce 1,000 units of cars. Generally, prices in developed countries are higher than prices in developing countries, so are the prices of intermediate goods in the US and China. To compare the size of the economy, or production activity in the US and China, we have to adjust it to the price differences in the two countries by using prices in the US as a reference. After adjusting, it turns out that the GDP triple P in China is greater, which is $21.3 trillion versus the GDP triple P of the US, which is only $18.6 trillion. Calculations from the IMF also show the same. So in real terms, China's economy is bigger than the US. China produces goods and services more than the US. So far, the US economy is considered larger than China only because the level of prices for goods and services is higher in the US. If you look at the gap between rich and poor, the gap in the US is too sharp because it adheres to the capitalist system. Meanwhile, in China, it is not too sharp because it adheres to the socialist system. As an actual example, let's compare the number of car sales in China and the US. In recent years, the number of car sales in China have been quite consistently much larger than the US, which is known as a car-loving country. However, though China's GDP triple P is the largest in the world, it does not mean that China is the most prosperous country, because this large economy is the result of the production of nearly 1.4 billion people of China, while the US produces it with only 300 million people. If we use GDP as a proxy to measure a country's prosperity, then we must use GDP per capita, which is total GDP divided by population. From this aspect, the US economy emerges stronger and the most prosperous. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell so you get notified when we upload a new video like this.